Hey everyone, Zach with Mateki Knives. Today I thought I'd do a little video showing 3 of the basic characteristics of a good edge geometry for a high performance knife. So I have here a Nakiri. One of the most basic characteristics is how thin is it right behind the cutting edge. So the mentality for a Japanese high quality kitchen knife is keeping your knife as thin as possible for the task at hand for optimal cutting performance, and yet having it thick enough to withstand some abuse. So we want the optimal cutting performance. In this case, for the Nakiri, it's primarily used for vegetables. So you're going to be cutting cucumbers or carrots, and it's not really going to be getting in there on a hitting bone like on a chicken. So you can handle it being thinner. So the Nakiri can be very thin. On the other hand, if you have this is a boning knife, you're going to want it just a little bit thicker behind the cutting edge. So we'll grind them just a little bit thicker. You're going to be hitting bones and torquing it a little bit. And an outdoor knife, you also want it just a little thicker. However, we can still be really thin on an outdoor knife as well because they cut so much better when they're thinner. So in an outdoor knife, the grind doesn't go up super high often, so it still has a lot of meat not too far up there in the steel. So we'll make our cutting edge very thin. It performs so much better the thinner you get. So obviously for a bigger knife and a bigger outdoor knife, bushcraft knife, we'll have to make them a little thicker because you're going to be using them harder. So the mentality applies to make it as thin as possible for the task. The second basic characteristic of a good edge geometry is what are the angles of your blade. So my wife and I had the privilege of going to Japan recently, and there we met some really nice people there at the steel manufacturing place we were at, and they did a Katra test on one of our knives. Katra test is basically, it's a controlled computerized test where they put your knife in a vise and they put some pressure on it with a controlled arm that has a bunch of cardstock with abrasive silica in it. So it'll wear your blade, and you see how many papers it'll cut. And our knife performed very well in that Katra test. And a lot of it was due to the sharp geometry that our primary and secondary edge had. So the angle that we typically shoot for in a kitchen knife is right around 15 degrees. So 15 degrees will look something like that, if you can see that. Pretty flat. And for an outdoor knife, it'll be maybe more like 15 to 20 degrees, somewhere in there. So still pretty flat as well. Also, the angle of your secondary edge is important. That will allow food or whatever it is to slip off effortlessly. So a lot of that has to do with the thickness of the spine. That'll kind of somewhat determine the angle you have too. So we like to get a pretty thin spine too, as thin as we can possibly get, still allowing some strength there for being abused. The one benefit, we have laminated steel we use here, so we can it'll handle a little more abuse at a thinner profile than just plain carbon steel would. So we have a hard carbon core laminated with 410 stainless, so it can handle being pretty thin. So the third characteristic for a third characteristic for good edge geometry is what kind of grind it has. These are the 3 basic grinds. This is a flat grind, and this is a convex grind, this is a hollow grind. So we primarily use a flat grind for outdoor knives. A few reasons for that. Eventually, your tip is going to wear up. You're going to have to sharpen it. So you'll want to sharpen the secondary edge eventually at some time, and you can do that with a Waterstone very easily. You can sharpen the secondary edge on a Waterstone, or maybe somebody, if you're not comfortable with it, which it doesn't take a lot of learning really. It's not very hard. Anyway, you can sharpen it easier, sharpen the secondary edge easier. A hollow grind for an outdoor knife is also a popular grind. It cuts very well, but it's harder to maintain. If you ever want to sharpen that secondary edge, you have to find the right wheel for that profile or flat to make that secondary edge sharper. So for our kitchen knives, we use primarily convex grinds and slightly convex. This is obviously much more than what our knives would be. And a good reason for that, a little bit of convexity, is it helps with food release. Food doesn't stick as badly as if it was just flat. If your blade's just perfectly flat, then it's going to stick a little more. So very slightly convex is what our kitchen knives will often have. So anyway, hopefully that was helpful, and hopefully you enjoyed it. Feel free to comment below or like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.